Hello, YouTube. My name is Jake Whitmer, Jacob C. Whitmer, and I am leaving politics after having worked in politics for 16 years. I have helped put several libertarian initiatives and referenda on the ballot. I've put libertarian candidates on the ballot in 16 different states on a regular, recurring basis. And in some of those states, I actually, the low population western states that actually have a chance of electing a libertarian, I actually went to those states and registered, in some cases, thousands of libertarians, like over 4,000 in the state of Alaska, and a couple thousand in Arizona, on a county-by-county basis. In some counties in Arizona, if you registered 500 libertarians, the libertarians would be a majority there, and they'd have the ability to control all tax allocation. And in any case, what I came to find out over 16 years of working for the libertarians is that they have no intention of electing anyone, not to any office that they could possibly win. And they run campaigns and candidates for offices that they mathematically can't win. There are mathematical things that are standing in the way of those victories that unsophisticated candidates are not usually aware of. They're usually not. It's usually kind of a spray and pray type thing where a candidate will run for governor or U.S. Senate, and the major parties spend $10 to $20 million on these races. They're not going to let the libertarians walk away with a governorship or even a Congress, even a seat in Congress, a U.S. House seat. You know, they can drop $10 million at the drop of a hat to protect a seat that is controlled by the incumbent party. Now that's based on the demographics of the district. So if there are more conservatives in a district, then Republicans will tend to control it. If there are more liberals in a district, so-called liberals, really socialists, then the Democrats will tend to control it. And for example, in Chicago, the Republicans don't even run anyone here, and the Republicans in Chicago are set up like the Libertarians are set up nationwide, to not be serious, to not even expend any money or effort. Now, the Libertarians do waste a giant amount of money. They waste a ridiculous amount of money, paying people like myself to waste our time and travel around to the different states and put statewide candidates on the ballot. Now, it's not entirely a waste of time, because having a statewide presence makes it easier to have a local presence in most of these states. In most of the states, the petitioning requirements are more difficult if you have no statewide presence. And if you have no statewide presence, you're delegitimized in the eyes of the rank-and-file voter who has never heard of any third party often enough. You know, they're a Democrat or a Republican because their mom or dad told them to be a Democrat or a Republican, but they have very little knowledge of any minor parties, or they rightfully view them as unserious and relatively disorganized, which they usually are. Now, we need to ask why the Libertarians are disorganized when they spend almost $1 million every 4 years. Now, the treasurer of the Libertarian Party, I can't think of his name off the top of my mind, in 2008, Aaron Starr, he told me that the Libertarians spent $750,000 accessing the ballot in 2008, and their political director was a throwaway position. Okay, it was a position where the political director could take all the blame for two people who roughly control ballot access for the Libertarians. It's been the same two people for about 16 years. And one of these guys, I think, is a well-intentioned guy. He's up in Alaska. He tends to run ballot access drives for the Libertarian Party. He's a single-issue guy. He's obsessed with a single issue. You'll find this that this is the case with a lot of libertarians. They have a single issue that they can't get over, and that issue is not necessarily an issue that touches all the other issues. You know, I suppose you could say I'm a single issue due process guy, but that's because we can't have freedom unless we do something about the court system that is making us unfree. But there are single issue guys who are obsessed with dirigible travel and insane things of that nature that nobody in the general public cares about. Everybody in the general public cares about the Bill of Rights. They care about freedom of speech. They care about not being spied on by the NSA. And as these issues come to the surface, it's okay to exploit them. And I'm not saying that it's not. But you never want to make any single issue an overriding concern of yours. And if it is, that's also not a very good reason to be involved with a third party. You should just pursue initiative and referenda that address that single issue, because every single issue now enjoys greater levels of support than the Libertarian Party. But why is it that the Libertarians don't spend their money electing state legislators and sheriffs? Because those two plans allow for state nullification. Thomas E. Woods has written a book called Nullification. You can probably see it on the shelf behind me there. And Richard Mack has also written a book on the county sheriff called The County Sheriff, America's Last Great Hope. These are super important books, and they lay out a strategy whereby states could take control back from the federal government and from the federal agenda, from the agenda of the drug warriors. Local cops destroy their local communities by enforcing a federal war on drugs. The federal war on drugs, it benefits law enforcement because they're able to steal people's money, their property, their possessions in the form of asset forfeiture laws. But it doesn't benefit the economy overall. It's a great detriment taking brains out of the economy. You know, putting those brains in a cage, training them how to be more violent criminals, and then releasing them after a few years, since you can't really make a drug offense into you can't put someone in life for a drug offense. You just put them around a bunch of violent criminals. They pick up even worse habits in prison, and they don't often get an education in prison that's worth anything. So then they're put back out on the streets, and they're in a terrible financial position. They have a felony record, and it's a recipe for disaster. So I found that traveling around the United States, libertarian issues and positions are very popular. That's not where the problem is. The problem is that we don't do anything that could possibly elect libertarians. And looking up at my notes here, what are the things that lead to success? The things that lead to success are the things that you'd find in a college political science 101 textbook, like Winning Elections by Dick Simpson. There's another book called Winning Elections by Foucheux, French last name, F-A-U-C-H-E-A-U-X. And the Foucheux book and the Simpson book will both teach you how to, they'll teach anyone how to walk door to door, talk to people, tell them about the candidates or the issues and that the candidate is addressing. Pick 3 local issues that are important to the locals, and tell them that your candidate is on the right side of those issues. And libertarians don't even have to lie, because we are on the right side of those issues. We're on the side of those issues that people generally support. They'll have some objections. They'll say, well, they'll be a part of a union, or they'll be getting money from the state, and they'll want to know, will libertarians interfere with that, depending on what part of the country they're in. They won't support gun rights if they're in a very socialist liberal area, and you'll have to explain some of the basics. But luckily, when people hear the libertarian explanation for gun rights, when they hear Frederick Douglass's reason for wanting everyone to have gun rights, that you can't trust the police and that the police can become corrupted, and then all that you have to do is point to the corruption in these liberal areas and point out how the socialist liberals betrayed black Americans by stripping them of their right to keep and bear arms at a point when blacks were starting to carry rifles because the drug war was being unevenly enforced in the inner city, and people's Fourth Amendment rights to be secure in their property were not being upheld. You've got situations like that liberals are very sympathetic towards, and many of them will just flip right on the spot on gun rights. You have to address all the objections in person, face to face, because you can't address whatever objection they provide via the mail. So face-to-face interaction is super important. So the Libertarian Party actually, they don't fire people like myself, but they demote them. What they do is they hire kind of rank-and-file socialist Democrats to do the ballot access petitioning after a guy like me has worked for them for several years. Now, this is where the people in the Libertarian Party's leadership says, oh, Jake Whitmer, you know, is sour grapes, he's not getting employed by us anymore. No, I can still go to the state parties where I have a good reputation and work for them, and I could continue to kind of dance around national trying to allocate money that had already been allocated to the states and to myself to other Democrat-operated petitioning companies. But what point would that serve? Because that's where the National Libertarian Party wants the money to go. They don't want the money to go to activists. They don't want the money to go to people who are going to go door to door and make new libertarians. They want the money to go to people like Darrell Bonner. Nice guy, great guy, not a libertarian. Doesn't make any new libertarians when he talks to people. Doesn't explain any of the issues to anyone when he talks to people. So why do they want the money to go to people like that? Why do they just allocate the money in closed door sessions to people like that? And why are there closed door sessions anyway? What can't the Libertarian Party membership be privy to that the leadership is privy to? It doesn't make any sense. Those are the deep state meetings there. And that's just my suspicion, but let's see here. In 1976,